Hey Gearfacts friends, today I'm comparing two generations of Boss multi-effects unit. We've got the Boss GT-10 and the classic Boss GT-5. But really in this video, I'm not just comparing two models, I'm comparing the old style Boss units with the new style Boss units. There are several models that look a bit like this one, and there are several models that look a bit like that one, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. First of all, the Boss GT5. Well, let's take a closer look. It's all very straightforward on the front panel. Editing is all driven by these buttons, which basically represent the effects chain. Selections done with the wheel. A few utility controls here. Then your pedals along the bottom and your expression on the right. It's pretty much a standard format, and it's a good design because it just works. It's very practical. The screen's quite small, but it gives you all the information that you need. And now the Boss GT10, well obviously it's a lot more impressive. I mean, look at that display, or displays plural I should say. You've got your alphanumeric there and the digital LCD there. So really there's all the information that you could want on your screen. Other than that, the layout's fairly similar. You've got your line of buttons here representing your effects chain. Some dials here for editing your values nice and quickly. At first glance that seems like a really good thing, but they do actually have their disadvantages as well. I'll talk about that in a moment. And then again, we've got our dial here. This time we've got some directional controls, which is quite handy for getting around menus. Some utility controls, pedals along the bottom, expression on the right. So even though the appearance is quite different, really the overall format is much the same between the two pedals. Both units give you 5 effects to choose from within each bank, plus there's a control pedal on the end here. That'll add an effect or take out an effect, while still staying within the same patch number within a particular bank. On the GT10 you'll see we actually have 2 control pedals, so within each patch within a bank we can make 2 changes. So for example, one could be to switch the delay on and off, and the other one could be to activate the wah pedal. So I guess in that respect the GT10 is a little bit more versatile than the GT5 with its one control button. But is it all about advances with the GT10? Well, GT10, it's 2 times GT5, so in theory it should be twice as good, right? Well no, not exactly. In some ways we've gone backwards a little bit. I was talking about these dials before. They do make editing values nice and quick. There's no disputing that, but if I move quickly down to the GT5 here, you'll see that they're a virtually flat control surface. And me personally, I like that. A lot of times cables are going to come flying across this control panel. They are on the floor, so they do get kicked and moved around an awful lot. And anything that protrudes, like dials or potentiometer knobs like these ones, they are a magnet for objects and feet that are carelessly placed around them. So like I said, pros and cons. Quick editing, but there is a bit of a risk there. And if you think I'm being melodramatic, well, just try going to a few studios and onto a few stages and see how rough things can get. And then of course we've got the display. Obviously there's no competition. I mean, the GT10 screen is probably 5 times the size of this little 90s style 2-line display here. But is that really a disadvantage? If I hold the camera right above the GT10 display here, you will see that yes, it does give you a lot more information, but it's also very large and very bright, and these lights below here are unbelievably intense. My camera is suppressing those bright LEDs quite a lot, but believe me, if you look around yourself on a darkened stage and then return your eyes to these lights, you'll be amazed at just how intense and uncomfortable they are on your eyeballs when you stare at them. It really can take a moment to adjust. So even though it makes the unit look quite impressive, it is a big negative, and I've known a lot of people to get some sticky backed paper and just cut little rectangles out and put them on top of them. Look at that shining through my finger there. That's actually illuminating my bloodstream. So yeah, very bright lights, way too bright, and they just get in the way of doing what you want to do. Okay, so let's talk about editing. Well, say I wanted to edit my distortion section of my effects chain. It's a little bit slow and clunky with GT5. You have to turn it on for a start, then choose exactly what kind of distortion that you want, and use the parameter control here to go through each of the parameters involved with that particular effect. In this case it's quite simplistic. It's just fuzz, drive and equalization controls with overall level. And for some players that's exactly what you want, just simplicity. Doing the same thing on the GT10, pressing overdrive and distortion there. Press it once more and then it's on. And you get all of your controls just on the one screen there. And this is where these potentiometers come in. You just got nice, quick access to all your editing there. So in that sense, the GT10 gets the job done much faster than the good old GT5. But what about what's happening under the hood? What actual specification differences do these pedals have? Well, it just so happens that I've printed out each of the spec sheets right here. And there are a few key differences. One fact that's surprisingly hard to find out is exactly how many effects each of these pedals have. So after a bit of research, I've found that the GT5 has about 28 major types of effects. That's incorporating all the distortions as just one effect, distortion. And using the same sort of formula with the GT10, we've got about 36 effects. So once again, the GT10 comes out way ahead and shows more depth and versatility. If we have a look at some of the more detailed little parameters, and I'll bring the other spec sheet over so that they're side by side, you'll see that the GT5 has 22-bit and 18-bit for analog to digital and digital to analog conversion respectively, and the GT10 is quite a long way ahead. Honestly though, how many amongst us can actually hear the difference when these kinds of figures are at play? Me personally, I've got no chance of telling the difference between 18-bit and 24-bit, but you may have better ears than me, so let's just move on. Program memories. Well, here we see the GT5 gives us 100 user patches that we can store, and sure, we can have 200 on the GT10, but really how many people can fill up 100 patches, or need 100 patches worth of ideas that they've come up with? Again, it's a fairly large technical difference, but in practice probably not that much of a concern. Let's move down a bit, and here we'll see two distinct advantages with the GT10, the big display and the USB connector. The GT5 actually predates USB really, or came out just when USB was emerging, so amongst its physical attributes you won't see a USB connector at all. One final thing I'll say, and again this is a small thing but a very practical thing, the GT10 takes a 9-volt power supply, which is great to see. For a while they were using 14-volt power supplies with some of Boss's models through the 90s and the zeros, and those power adapters were big, cumbersome and very expensive. It's good to go back to 9-volt where things are cheaper and a bit more replaceable. It's still not as good though as the GT5 because it's got a cable that simply goes straight to the back of the unit. And honestly, that's the way all multi-effects pedals should be. I mean, there's no reason why the power adapting component can't be stored within inside this reasonably sizable case. So finally, the GT5 gets an advantage for the design side of things with its direct line power. But ultimately it comes down to how each of these sound. Well, this is where I find there's a big difference. I won't play the sounds for you in this demo because we're talking mainly about specification and physical differences. But for my money, I would choose the GT5 every time. Pretty much everything under the hood is analog. All the controls are digital. All the actual sounds, or most of them, come from analog sources. The GT10 is all digital, and that's not to say it's a bad pedal. You can buy anything from Boss and you'll be pretty happy because they are the leader in guitar pedals. But really, when playing, I just find I have a whole lot more fun with the GT5 because it just sounds so natural and bright. And the distortions in particular give you all those unexpected artifacts and nice little nuances. The GT10 just doesn't quite come across the same way, although it does have much more power in terms of synthesis and guitar amp simulation. Those kinds of electronic interventions in the sound really are miles ahead with the GT10, but there's no doubt that the GT5 has a superior fun factor. And I think most experienced guitarists, or at least guitarists who've had experience with the GT5, would agree it has a closer relationship with the original pedals that it's representing in this effects chain. So if you're going online and you're shopping really seriously for a multi-effect system, I guess I'll finish by making the same point that I've made many times in Gearfacts videos, and that is that newer is not necessarily better. And there's actually a second point too, and that is when you're trying out multi-effects pedals, buy what makes you happy, buy what makes you feel good and what makes you smile when you plug it in and play it. Don't go on specifications alone. So I'll say it one last time, there's nothing wrong with the GT10, it's not that you'd be disappointed if you bought it, but the GT5 is just way cooler. It also has a very close relative, the GT3, and a little bit later on Boss released the GT6 and the GT8. All of these units have their advantages and disadvantages, and there is a clear process of technological development going on when you look at them all lined up one by one. But I've tried them all and documented them quite comprehensively on YouTube, and I've consistently found that the GT5 comes up as being the best one. Having said that, I'll put up some other links here now to some other videos that might interest and inform you. And I'll also thank you for watching Gearfacts. Hope you take the time to like, comment or subscribe to Gearfacts, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.